All right. So we have about 20 minutes left where we are getting ready for our panel discussion. If you've got comments, if you've got questions, you need to use our Facebook, the comments in Facebook. But I'm just still, laughing at that comment from Sana. It isn't just me. I thought I was the weird one. Can I just say, I think that this is something that I hear all the time when it comes to diabetes. I've so often thought I thought it's just me, and it's never ever been just me. There's always other people who are walking the same path. So that is one of the reasons why peer support is so important. Having these conversations within our diabetes community is so important, and creating safe spaces for us to have these sorts of conversations is absolutely critical. So get ready for our panel discussion and drop your comments here in the chat on Facebook. And please, if we could bring back all of our speakers so that you're not just having to stare at my face. Hello, Katarina. Hello, Sana. Hello, Chris. And there's Gordon and there's David. Look at that. We are all here now. How are we all? Are we all good? Mind's blown. Fantastic.
So much feeling less weird. Thank you, Chris.
Excellent. We've got a comment here from Shane who says, amazing speakers as always. Thanks all. And here are those amazing speakers right now. I'm going to start with a question if I can. So today we are talking about, the topic of this event is your diabetes may vary and your insulin may as well. So the YDMV, your diabetes may vary, that's something that's in our community all the time. Katarina, I want to ask you this question. Why is it that insulin in particular seems to be one of the areas where there doesn't seem to be much of a discussion, often from healthcare professionals? There sort of does seem to be an idea that it is just a one-size-fits-all. Why do you think that is with insulin maybe more than with different technologies? Sorry to throw you in the deep end there, but I'm starting with you.
No worries at all. Well, we're all different, right? We're people with different hormonal constellations. We have different body weights, different dimensions, different ages. So even for one person, how you respond to a certain type of insulin will change over time. And there's no one size fits all for sure, but it's all about finding out what works for you and to get the most out of what you have access to. I think this is always the top priority. And whenever you think, oh, well, this is really not working, or it really does not match my expectations, then I think it's time to move on and find something else for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes though, having those sorts of conversations can be difficult. I love this question. And Gordon, this is asked of you, so I'm going to start with you, but everybody else should think of an answer just in case I throw to you as well. But do you have the feeling that diabetes technology has evolved massively in the last few years in particular?
Absolutely, Renza. Look, in thinking about this talk, I was thinking, well, actually, insulin's in some respects only a very small part of the improvement. I know the improvements have been massive, but it really is delivery systems and monitoring systems that I've noticed the most substantial change. So yes, massive is a description.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what, I'm going to throw to you, David. I'm going to ask you, because as somebody who is a diabetes technologist, I guess, what have you found you and I have known each other about 5 years. Let's talk about that time period. Has there been this massive exponential change, do you think, in that time period?
Yes, certainly over a longer time frame, things always seem to be moving faster now than they did before.
Yeah.
Certainly the technology I'm using now versus like the automated technology that I'm using now versus what I had 5 years ago was the algorithms are similar. They've refined a bit, but more tools are coming together. So all of these things of the different CGMs and the smaller pumps and faster pumps, more convenient and smaller devices to run these on, all of these things are advancing. And yes, when we multiply all those things together, the advancements seem to be quite astronomical.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sana, what are the discussions that you're having in your networks about things that are changing, whether it be different devices, different insulins, the two coming together? How do those conversations happen, and what are the conversations? What are you talking about that?
So recently, flash monitoring has come into Pakistan and people are starting to use it. Those who can afford, they're starting to use it, and people are actually looking at the data and the patterns and realizing what kind of food affect their blood sugar levels. So that's something that's new for us, I would say. So in our networks, in our peer support networks, that's talked of the down at the moment. But yes, again, that's a very small community. Many still are struggling with checking once or twice a day. So there's a rainbow of kind of access issues.
There was a comment just up there, and I want to come back to it, and I do want to ask you, and it was from Kara. She said, why does it seem diabetes technology changes so much, but access to insulin doesn't? Why does diabetes technology evolve this much, but access to insulin does not? Does it feel like that?
I'm a bit I have a harsh feeling towards that, and I'm sorry for saying that, but I think that it's mostly because the health systems have accepted the status quo. They are okay being what they have, having what they have, and they're okay with offering what they have. So that's what needs to change, and that's why these talks are so much important. People need to highlight the challenges that they're facing so that someone listens. I'm sure someday someone will listen and things will start changing.
Wonderful, thank you. We have a comment here from Aline. And so, Chris, I'm going to ask you a question once I read this out. Way before I learned about dynamic ISF, I asked my healthcare professional if maybe this ratio isn't linear, and their face said, "What?" So my question to you is, have you had conversations with healthcare professionals about the work that you're doing, and what's the response been?
I have. Even going way back when I first started noticing this in myself and trying to graph things out or whatever, I actually tried to discuss it with my endocrinologist, and I got told we see it in hospitalized patients.
Right.
When we need to, bring them out of DKA, and we notice that, insulin isn't as effective, and then it gets more and more effective as they come closer and closer back into range.
Yeah.
But I was also told there's no data to support adjusting the dosing.
Yeah. Yep. Okay.
And so it doesn't become, a standard practice to do that unless there's data to support it. So we wind up in sort of a catch-22 where there's no data because nobody's collecting it. It's going to be expensive. Clamp studies are going to run $30,000 per patient per session.
Yeah.
I mean, that's prohibitively expensive for something that's, sort of pure science.
Yeah.
And so I think the big thing that the sort of light bulb moment that I had was, why don't we just ask people with type 1 diabetes?
That'd be novel.
That's novel, yes. I was about to say, Chris, I've relied on data to make changes, my own, because my reaction is exactly Sana's, I must say.
Yeah. Great comment here, but I'm going to come to you in a minute, David, and ask you about if you've had that conversation with your healthcare professionals personally, like for yourself. So for my child, I found formula aggressive, but you really helped me to understand her sensitivity better and to not be scared of larger corrections at higher blood glucose levels. Thank you. David, tell me, have you spoken with your healthcare professional about what is going on, when it comes to, different glucose levels?
Well, I think I have a fairly enlightened endocrinologist. We have a peer-to-peer discussion pretty much whenever I go in, and she basically asks me what's the latest things that I've noticed. I haven't particularly discussed with her the issue of variable changing ISF. I have, of course, tested how this worked, and I've got it implemented in my own system. It's a slightly different thing to the dynamic ISF that Chris was talking about, but there are some similarities. When someone says that, I think a bunch of people have said this, when someone says, but there's no data to support this, well, I can do an N=1 study quite quickly, and I do them all the time. And if it works for me, then that's a very good start for me. If we can find something more generic that works for other people, hopefully some of the stuff I've been doing with this faster insulin that we can't get in Australia yet, but I've managed to get some and been using it. I've been able to show people what the improvements are. Yeah. And it's largely improvements to quality of life. Now, trying to get that listed on some bean counters spreadsheet of this is a good reason to have it is harder than for us people who actually live with diabetes, but it's a start.
Absolutely. Katarina, I've got 2 questions here that I'm going to throw your way. So this is the first one. How much faster can we go in terms of how quickly insulin can start working? Is there going to be an ultra rapid insulin at some point? I don't know. We're going to have to come up with a new name. Those insulin vials are too little to keep adding different names like that. But what do you think? How fast can we go? We're not fast enough yet though, right?
Yeah, I think so. The ultra rapids, they act a bit faster than the ones that are just rapid. Mm-hmm. And their onset and peak would be a bit faster. And with a bit, that means 5 to 10 minutes. Yeah. And I think the limitation is not necessarily the type of insulin, but the place where we inject it. So if you put insulin in fat tissue, which we're doing with insulin pumps and pens and syringes, it's going to take a while because, your body has to get the insulin into the bloodstream and then throughout the entire body, and that takes a while. So if we really want it faster, we would have to find a way to apply the insulin somewhere else. So in a person without diabetes, the pancreas does not put the insulin in the fat. It would go into the bloodstream. And this is why people without diabetes get much faster effects, more than ultra rapid of their insulin. But so far, this is the limit that we have, no matter what type of medication we use.
Yeah, absolutely.
And shorter tails.
Say that again.
And Chris was saying in shorter tails. The human insulin is the old regular insulin, so it's slower than the rapid insulins. But you're right, it gets delivered almost directly to the liver. So it can be turned on and can be turned off straight away. We don't have it sitting around in the subcutaneous tissue and floating around. So it's immediate on, immediate off. And if we could get that in an artificial insulin, some delivery system, it would be amazing.
Yeah. Oh, yes, absolutely. And we've heard about the rage bolus, right? So if we have a situation like Chris presented, that was fascinating data and insights, by the way, and hours go by and it's still high, then you have a tendency to just bolus again and again and again. And if you don't know that the tail of your insulin action will still be active, you end up in a pretty bad hypo. So I think we've all been there, right? And if we put wrong settings that do not match your physiology and that do not match how insulin acts in your body, in your bolus calculator, or even if you just do it in your mind, then you end up risking a low. Yeah. But this is why I love events like this, right? This is where I generate my next research questions from. Real world data from the community. And then
Katarina, another question for you here. Do you have professional experiences with both ultra rapid insulins used by children? If so, has a super fast one, an ultra rapid insulin, better results in glucose management?
Yeah, well, my impression, but this is N=1 as well, is the smaller you are, the less is the effect, because even rapid insulins get absorbed quite quickly if you're a small child and do not have a great body weight, and the effect is probably less than in an adult, but it's still there.
Yep. We had a comment and it did flash up, but I'm just going to read it out just because I think that this is really an interesting comment from Andrea Lindberg. She says, even ultra rapid acting insulins are not very fast. I guess this is, it's all relative, isn't it? That is really one of the biggest weak link in having a fully closed loop system. And I think that just what that reminds us of is that as people with diabetes, it doesn't matter what the tools are, being able to effectively mimic what would happen if we didn't have diabetes still remains an impossibility, really, in a lot of ways, until we have everything working exactly as we need it to. Now, I wanted a question to end with that was a little bit about where do we go in the future, and we've kind of got a question from somebody. So I'm going to ask this, but I'm not going to ask everybody. So let me just ask a couple of you this question. I'm going to ask you, Chris, what is your feeling on encapsulated insulin?
Encapsulated insulin?
Yes. I can throw to David Burren and he can start, and then I can come.
Can I get a definition?
Yeah,
there?
David, do you want to go?
Well, it's not a term that's often widely used. I can think of several definitions. So which one do we go with?
So,
there's some of the insulins are the smart insulins, which tend to activate when there's more glucose in the system, and there's been research in those. I'm very nervous about that because this activation I then have no control over once it's in the system. I'm not sure which other definition might be used.
You know what, we might leave it because I think that, Terry, if you want to ask the question again with a little bit more clarification, we'll see if we can grab it, but we're probably about out of time, I think, just about. I do want to thank all of our speakers. We have got so many comments, so many really positive comments. Love this talk. Amazing speakers as always. Thank you so much for sharing your incredible knowledge, for sharing your own personal lived experience as well. I think that it is critically important, but it is also a big thing to do. So thank you for doing that in a public forum. Please, everybody, while everybody's here right now, you can see Twitter handles there. Please do engage and connect with our speakers. They truly are wonderful people in the diabetes community, amazing advocates, and we're so thrilled here at dedoc that we were able to bring them together for this. And Stephanie, part of the dedoc team, so happy to see so many familiar faces here. It feels a bit like a reunion after we've all had a bit of time off over the holiday period. So thank you so much.